Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. I guess I should throw Louisville in there too. Maybe a couple Louisville fans made it over. But after a brutal loss on Saturday, Notre Dame and Louisville, I guess, will play after tough losses. And I have Mr. Jeff Greer. He's on to help me with Louisville. We already had him on for Bellarmine, so if you recognize him, that's why. Or you watched some of his stuff. He's on Field of 68. Floyd Street's finest, I'm pretty sure. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
For sure. So I guess we'll get into it. Roy Williams described Louisville as a team without their legs on Saturday, and I think we all know how brutal that game turned out for them. Do you think that's it's going to change at all on Saturday? I know it might be hard to kind of tell, but do you think they'll get their legs back by tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think they'll be in better shape tomorrow night. I think that was we've seen what it looks like when teams that are not deep like Florida State or as talented as Florida State come back from pauses. I mean, it's just really difficult. And Louisville was dealing with they traveled with 10 guys. I think a couple of them are still getting their wind back from having recent scares with COVID. But more importantly, and I think people, if they're listening to this who have played college sports or at least understand what the ins and outs of college sports look like, it's not so much that they're out of shape per se. It was more that college athletes are creatures of habit, and they have a daily schedule, especially in season. They have a daily schedule that is regimented. You get used to your prep, you get used to everything, and coaches even more so. And Louisville was completely put out of whack all week. It was a disaster of a week, really, for Louisville. That being said, I also don't think there's an excuse for losing by 45 points if you're an NCAA tournament team. So, if they had lost by 20 or even 25, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, well, maybe that was the legs. But I think 45 is really the wheels coming off a little bit. But I would expect them to be in a little bit better spirits on Tuesday. And I would think pretty angry about everything that happened over the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully they don't come out with a ton of fire for our sake. But I kind of going off the fire thing, Bray said they pressed the whole game. Basically in his presser, he was like, Louisville's going to press us the whole game. We better be ready. Do you think that's possible, or do you think he's kind of just caught up in that they lost to the press?
Yeah, he's probably just caught up there. Louisville is going to be, as long as Chris Mack is there, they are going to be a very half-court oriented team. Now they'll try to run out a little bit off of defensive rebounds. They have good rebounding wings and guards who can come off the perimeter, get rebounds, and don't have to make the outlet pass. They can start their own break. But Louisville is a very slow-paced team in terms of tempo. They want to beat you in the half court. Now, they have the funny thing about that is they've actually played better when there's been more possessions in games. So when they're playing at a faster pace, they play better. But it just has not happened a ton this season. So I think they want to beat you in the half court. They want to play their pack line defense. They're only going to press if they're losing late in the game. So I think Bray might have just been playing some mind games.
Yeah, I figured, especially with them coming off a pause, I didn't think that was too likely. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. But I guess, can you tell us about each of the Louisville starters? Now that we're kind of deeper in the season, you have a better idea about them than the Bellarmine guys.
Yeah, well, I think Louisville's starting five on an ideal day, if everyone is healthy, will be different than what will probably start tomorrow night. So I'll get to the change probably. I'll get to the change at the end of the starters. Carlik Jones is the point guard. I'm sure Notre Dame fans have heard about him in passing from other games this season on the ACC network or ESPN. I'm sure the broadcasters have mentioned him as an ACC Player of the Year candidate. He hasn't played as well in conference play as he did at the start of the season. His three-point shooting in particular has really flagged in the last couple of weeks after being up around 40% or so for most of the first half of the season. But he is their difference maker. He's dynamic. He can get into the lane. He's a really good stop and pop jump shooter. He's really good at getting all the way to the rim and scoring over much bigger guys. And he creates a little bit. He's a pesky defender. So everything runs through him. And then David Johnson, who's the other guard, who is a projected NBA draft first-round draft pick, has had a relatively inconsistent season. He's had a lot more usage this season. He's been asked to be a little bit more of a scorer and a creator at the same time. Last year as a freshman, he was primarily just a creative player. But when he's playing well, Louisville typically is playing well. When he's inconsistent, they kind of need Carlik Jones to be the one to carry them. The starters, if the starting lineup is what I think it will be, it'll probably have Dre Davis and Samuel Williamson in the starting lineup again. I would imagine that in an ideal world, and maybe by the NCAA tournament, if Louisville makes it, Dre Davis and Samuel Williamson, one of them will probably come off the bench. My guess would be Dre Davis, who is a freshman, will be like the sixth or seventh guy. But for now, they're starting those two together, and something familiar to Notre Dame fans, playing kind of a two-wing forward lineup with just one big. They're still scrappy. They're good rebounders. They're not great three-point shooters, but they're pretty good scorers around the rim and in the lane. So those two guys, Sam Williamson is probably more important to Louisville at this point. He's a McDonald's All-American, or at least was out of high school. He's had a relatively inconsistent season, but he's a guy who, if he can find some consistency and give them, even if it's like 10-6, 10-5 a game, that makes Louisville a very different team. The guy who will probably start at center on Tuesday night is Jalen Withers, who is a converted stretch four into a starting five. They put a bunch of weight on his body in the offseason because they knew about the injury to the guy I'm about to talk about. And they knew they were going to have to use him at center for most of the season. So he can stretch you a little bit at the center spot. He can step out and hit threes. He can handle a little bit, but he's really at his best in pick and roll situations and pick and pop situations. He should be playing the four. By the time this tournament starts, I would think that he'll be the power forward. And then Malik Williams, who is second last year in Defensive Player of the Year, voting in the ACC, had foot surgery, I believe, at the end of October, early November, and missed the first 3.5 months of the season. But he's their senior captain. He's their key guy in the paint, in the lane. He came in. He's actually from Fort Wayne, up near you guys. But he came in thinking he was going to be like a stretch four and shoot a ton of threes and be an inside-out player who could handle. And Louisville's coaches basically were like, dude, you're a center. Like, please learn how to post up, and we'll teach you how to do that. And that's been the role that he has played the last 1.5 to 2 years. So having him back gives Louisville that true center that they haven't had. I don't think he'll be a starter, but I think he played like 17 minutes, 18 minutes against North Carolina, and I would imagine they'll up his minutes even more on Tuesday night as needed.
Gotcha. I have the stats pull up 17 minutes, so you're pretty much right on there. But you mentioned Carlik Jones kind of being a creator, and me and my co-host took a look into their stats, and David Johnson's the only guy shooting above 30% from three that's taken more than 10 attempts on the year, which is not a good thing for them. He's
No.
actually shooting 40%, so that's good for him. But do you think Notre Dame could kind of drop into a zone against them? Is that something the teams have done a lot just because of how badly they shoot threes?
Yeah, so before Louisville played Duke, so that would have been honestly, that's forever ago now. It's like 3 weeks ago, but only like 2 or 3 games ago, ironically, because of the COVID pause. I actually went back and looked it up. of the times that either David Johnson or Carlik Jones drove into the lane and kicked it back out to a three-point shooter in a catch-and-shoot situation, Louisville was shooting like 22% from three, which is just miserable. So, and it hasn't gotten much better. The difference was when they played Duke, Duke tried a 2-3. It was kind of like Syracuse, where it was like so extended on the wings that sometimes it looked like a 3-2 instead of a 2-3, where they were really trying to guard the perimeter and basically say, we're going to cut off your driving lanes and make you shoot threes. But Louisville hit just enough early on. I think it was Quinn Slazinski and Charles Minland, I think, made 2 threes, maybe Sam Williamson. And that just forced Duke to have to guard them in man-to-man. And so I think if you're Louisville, you don't have to be great at three-point shooting for your offense to work. You just have to be decent enough that it's a threat. So even if you're shooting 32, 33%, obviously that's better than 22%, right? So that is something that I think a lot of teams have basically said, hey, beat us with your three ball and we'll come out of our defense. And they've been able to do that. Sometimes they shot it okay against Georgia Tech. They shot it okay against Duke, and they won those games. So I think David Johnson is a guy that they're going to try to continue to get him looks because his shooting has been so good this year. I think Carlik Jones expects to be a better three-point shooter than his numbers reflect. And it's really the guys who are supposed to be the role player three-point shooters who have let them down, namely like Quinn Slazinski, Josh Nickelberry, to a lesser extent, Sam Williamson and Dre Davis. If those guys each, and Charles Minland coming in off the bench now that he's healthy, if those guys can, like, between that group of like 6 players, if they can make 2 threes in this game in the first half, that will force Notre Dame to have to reconsider how they're defending Louisville. But if I'm an opposing coach, I'm totally thinking what you just said is like, I'm going to throw a zone at you and make shots, and we're gonna try to defend the lane and seal off the lane, and you've got to make shots and prove that you can actually consistently hit them.
Makes sense. It's amazing how badly some of these teams shoot for being a or 6 team, but is that, I would say that's their biggest weakness. What do you think their biggest strength is as a team?
Ooh, great question. It's probably their defense. They're typically a pretty good – if the energy is there, which has been a little bit of a challenge at times for Chris Mack to drum that up, if their energy is there, defense is where it shows the most. I think they've got a lot of flaws on offense, but their defensive rebounding is really good. North Carolina, notwithstanding, that was a disaster for them on the offensive glass. UNC just dominated there and got a bunch of points and second chance opportunities. But typically, Louisville is a pack line defense that wants to be probably more like Wisconsin than Virginia, but really just cut off your driving lanes, make you shoot contested jump shots, help out off your guy and fill gaps, swipe at the ball, but really stay true to your guys, stay in front of them, and keep them there, and defensive rebound and fundamentally dominate the glass and keep you to 1 jump shot. That's their goal, and they've actually done that for the most part pretty well. In the games that they have won, especially, they've hit those cylinders. In the games they've lost, the energy hasn't always been there, and they've been beaten off the dribble and stuff like that. And that, I mean, defeats the entire purpose of the pack line. So, but that's their biggest strength. And I think that's going to be what they rely on to try to get some wins here to finish out the season.
You kind of just answered my next question, but they're going in the right track if they're trying to dominate the glass. They meet the right team tomorrow night if they're trying to control the glass. But what do you think Louisville needs to do to win? You kind of touched on this already, though.
Yeah, the funny thing is like 2 years ago, they were – I forgot what the streak was. They had lost like 5 of 6 or 6 of 7. I mean, they were really in sort of like sort of dire straits in kind of in a nearing the bubble conversation, even though they had enough wins early in the season that people are like, okay, yeah, they're probably going to make the tournament. And then they got to play Notre Dame, and they won by like 15 points and just felt really comfortable in that game. Typically, in recent years, it's been a good matchup for Louisville. I think it is a dangerous thing to play a team that, in theory, is a good shooting team, and offensively it has the firepower to score. Because, like I said earlier, the whole point of their defense is to force you to shoot jump shots, and Notre Dame can make jump shots. So yeah, I mean, I think their defense has to be able to not just force jump shots, but be there to contest them, dominate the glass, like you said, maybe scratch and claw and get a few offensive rebounds and putbacks. That was the difference maker with Samuel Williamson against Georgia Tech. I think he ended up with 20 points and 18 rebounds or something like that, which is obviously crazy. But even if he can give you, again, like I said earlier, if he can give you 10 and 6, and he can get you maybe 2 putbacks, and Jalen Withers and Malik Williams can get you a couple putbacks, that helps your offense. And that's something that I think Louisville really needs on Tuesday night. But I haven't felt confident about anything with Louisville in terms of predictions this year, outside of maybe a couple of games here and there that I thought just it was a good matchup for them. But that said, I find it really hard to imagine that they don't at least put themselves in good position to win tomorrow because of the way things went on Saturday. I think that should, in theory, based on their reaction to other situations so far this season, should kind of slap them in the face a little bit and snap them out of it. And Notre Dame just happens to be the next game for them. But Notre Dame's scrappy, man. I think I think they know that. I think Louisville knows that, and they'll have to really be on their P's and Q's on defense and dominate the glass and be able to manufacture some points.
For sure. I think you do a better job scheming against Notre Dame than Jim Boeheim did on Saturday. Ultimately, it worked out for them, but I think Syracuse should be looking at you whenever he decides to step down. So,
hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think most people could draw up a better defensive scheme against Notre Dame than But you kind of took my last question with the prediction. So do you have anything else that you want to touch on, or did you get to everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think Louisville will win tomorrow. Like I said, I'm not super confident in that because there's no reason to be confident in any of these teams in the ACC outside of like Florida State. But yeah, I mean, if I had to pick, I think I was pretty close last time with the Bellarmine Notre Dame game. I think I picked Notre Dame by like 12 or 14 or something like that, and it was pretty close. I'll say Louisville wins. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I'll say Louisville wins 68-61.
Sounds not as good as the Bellarmine prediction. I think you're going to be about like 10, 15 points off just because of Notre Dame. They're going to 10-point win, obviously. But thank you for coming on. Good to have you as our only returning guest that isn't our co-host. Thank you for coming on. And hopefully we can do this maybe the ACC tournament or if Notre Dame schedules Bellarmine in the fall. So thank you.
There you go.
All right, so now we've heard from Jeff about Louisville. Got a lot of good information from him. There was a lot of stuff that I kind of wanted cleared up before this game. He did a good job addressing it, about the shutdown, about Louisville's potential press. So really happy to have him on. Thanks, Mr. Greer, for coming on if you're watching still. But I guess I'm going to go into stuff Notre Dame needs to do to win. Start with the keys. Number one, I think we all know what I'm going to say, break the press. I don't think they're going to press the whole game like Bray said, but they're probably going to pressure the ball with Carlik Jones. He has 1.5 steals a game. That's a lot. That's more than anybody on Notre Dame has. I could see him being kind of like a Jose Alvarado type defender. I haven't paid attention too much to his defense. I haven't watched Louisville as much as I would have liked to, but I've watched them a lot. I've still watched like 5 or 6 games of theirs. And he's going to give you a tough time. If Prentice Hub cannot beat ball pressure tomorrow, we're in a heap of trouble. So you got to beat the press. Hopefully they've been working on it. I thought they were going to come out and actually beat it on Saturday, but I was wrong. So frustrating. Also, can we address Jim Boeheim? I talked about him a little bit earlier, but like Syracuse could have won that game by probably 10, and they wouldn't have been down in the first place if Jim Boeheim didn't play that stupid zone. Not mad about it, but like I feel like the game has passed him up. Just honestly, I know it's off topic, but I guess I'll get back into it. This has kind of been a theme lately, and I think it really applies to this game. In my keys, just shoot the lights out. That's what you got to do against the pack line. I know Durham and Laz have done a good job against pack lines. Laz had a good game against Bellarmine, or no, Laz shot like 3 shots against Bellarmine, but both of them played well against Virginia. I think Durham had a good game against Bellarmine. Virginia Tech Durham had a decent game. Laz had a good game. So they're going to have to shoot the lights out, though. You can't win games without your guards. I think we've seen that a lot this year, that Notre Dame's guards run the show. We'll probably talk more about this in the offseason. Maybe we'll do a full podcast about it. But in games Nate Laszewski is running the show, they lose almost every time. He had a really good game at times on Saturday, lost the game. UNC, there's a couple other games. Georgia Tech, he played really well in, and they lost just because the guards couldn't get anything going. You can't rely on forwards nowadays. I think we've seen that with Syracuse. It just doesn't work really. You have to have good guards, kind of like Iowa too. They have the best big man in the country. They run their offense through them, and they're still not even close to the level of Illinois, Ohio State, or Michigan. So I think the guards have to shoot the lights out. The guards have to run the show against the pack line. They have to move it, get good looks, and I think they'll have a really good shot if they can get open looks from 3. And they haven't done a terrible job against the pack line, actually. Just Virginia the first time, they're really hedging out and making it really tough on Hub. So hopefully Louisville doesn't do that, and the guards can really get it going. 2 or 3 rebound. I have a lot. I have 5 keys today. Rebound, Louisville's averaging 38 rebounds a game. Notre Dame's averaging 33. So you have to out-rebound them. Can't let them get second chance points like you did against UNC. So that's what I have. 4, control the tempo. Notre Dame could really take advantage of Louisville coming off the pause. They're not necessarily out of shape, but I don't think they're going to be able to run with Notre Dame for 40 minutes if Notre Dame's playing the way they want to, like getting out of transition. Did a really good job against that, against Syracuse with that. Early, they were getting out in transition, getting good looks. If Notre Dame can do that against Louisville, it'll make it a lot easier on themselves. And then 5, don't let the momentum swing. Louisville is going to have fans in the crowd, probably the biggest crowd they played against all year. And lately, they felt runs coming, and they just can't counter them. So hopefully the fans won't play too much of a role, but I could definitely see Louisville going on a big run and already having a really tough time, especially with the fans there and them cheering Louisville on, bring the energy up for them. So hopefully they take advantage of the fans rather than letting Louisville take advantage of them. So that's what I have for my keys, what to watch for. I have a few things also. Can Louisville get Notre Dame out of their zone? I think Bray maybe will come out in the zone. I don't know how much he's going to run necessarily because they probably want to control the pace. And zone kind of slows the other team down. But if Louisville can shoot them out of their zone, that's power to them. I think you got to make Louisville outshoot you to win this game. You can't let Carlik Jones drive and kick or Johnson drive and kick. So I think the zone is definitely what they need to do tomorrow night. And I think you force Louisville to beat it. If they beat it, that's cool. You lose because of that. You shouldn't be mad about that. If he doesn't come out of it when they beat it, then that's another story. But I think he needs to come out in the zone, see what happens, because it could really shut him down like it did Miami. 2, how early does Louisville press? Bray said they're going to press the whole game. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. That's up to you. especially a team coming off a pause. I don't necessarily think that makes a whole lot of sense, but it's possible. Hopefully Notre Dame, like I said, I hope that's what they're doing all practice, to be honest. Shooting threes and breaking the press. I mean, that's pretty much what they need to do to beat Louisville. So hopefully they've been doing that so we don't have another late game collapse. I mean, if Prentice Hub and Cormac and Wirtz are getting trapped like that on the press, like it's brutal. And even when they did break the press a couple times, they just couldn't convert on easy looks. And Hub was getting trapped anyway when they broke it. So hopefully they can do it. I think they can. I mean, Hub's got a little bit better at being poised, and he has other ball handlers with him now. So they definitely have the guys to do it. They just haven't done it to this point. So hopefully they can. And then the third thing to watch for, how much does Bray and Hub and all those guys get Leshevsky and Durham involved against other pack lines? They've done a good job getting good looks. So hopefully they can get some looks, but can't be dependent on them. Got to get the guards going. Leading scorer, Laz. That's my prediction. I don't know. Like Notre Dame's guards are going to have kind of a hard time, even if Louisville's playing the pack line, just because Carlik Jones is a pesky defender, and then they got other guys with length on the perimeter, so it's going to be tough. Hopefully they can take advantage of Louisville kind of packing it in and get good looks from three and hit them. They've been hitting them lately, so they never went on a shooting slump against Syracuse. It was just a press. So if Notre Dame can get hot, I think they have a really good chance to win this game. They'll probably win. I'm pretty certain if they shoot the ball and beat the press, they win this game. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to pick Louisville. Hope I'm wrong. My record is actually really good right now. I think Jake's a little bit better, but prediction Louisville by 5. I really hope Notre Dame can pull this game out. I don't know that they need it. They need to get a positive record, at least get an NIT, which would be really good for them. I think NIT would do them wonders, just play in the postseason. Or they can kind of feel what it's like to play with your back against the wall. So hopefully they can make it there, and this is the first step to doing so. Pretty sure Louisville's quad 1 or their upper quad 2. So this would be a big win for resume sakes. It's up to you to believe whether you think they have any chance to get in March Madness after Saturday or not, but I really hope so. I think Notre Dame has a really good shot at this game. It's hard for me to see them dealing well with guys on the perimeter who have length like that after the Georgia Tech game. I think this team's pretty similar to Georgia Tech outside of their big men. So that's all I have for this one. I'll probably bring Jake on before Boston College. I don't think you guys are too into Boston College. So we'll probably just talk Notre Dame, and we'll talk about this game and Saturday. So thank you guys for watching. Go Irish.